Hello and welcome back. Hope that everybody had a nice, restful, and thoughtful day. Um, it was pointed out to me by my wife that I had not yet said my name in any of the times I've participated in the introduction of Flint, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that my name is Ryan Van Wyk, and I'm a member of Awakening Together here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So really delighted to be with all of you. I know I've been corresponding with a number of you over the days via email as well. Um, so in just a moment, I'll turn it over to Flint. So Flint will, as in the 2 nights previous, will provide some teaching. There may be some time after that that will allow for some more engagement. And then at 7:30 Central Standard Time, we will make the transition again from the webinar format to the Zoom meeting. And then we'll have about 30 minutes of time to just reflect and engage a little bit with the teaching that's offered tonight by Flint. So I'll likely come back on at the last minute of the hour and a half that we have with Flint and just give us that prompt to make that transition. And then I will see everybody over in the Zoom meeting. So without further ado, I will invite Flint onto the screen and turn it over to him.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm glad that you said your name. I would have to say that everything that's happening in this retreat and the seed that was planted for the Sangha, it's all Ryan's fault in a way, because he first started coming to the retreats in Madison. And then Emily joined him and some other folks did. And then they invited me to Minneapolis. So his leadership and the impulse to create this has been sustained by the community beyond just Ryan and also Emily. But he was really the person who began it. There's a very well-known phrase for those who have studied some of the teachings of Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, who I've spoken about, in which he would ask his students, in an unusual use of English, which was his second language, he would say, "What is your inmost request? What is your inmost request? What is that calls the deepest in you?" And I think this is some of what we've all responded to in arriving here, in being together and practicing together, and how communities develop, because once we come together, we begin to experience that shared longing, which many of you spoke to me about in your emails. Both a shared difficulties and challenges, but also the shared longing for connection as a way to meet them. And as we do, then something can turn, and this is where we are in our teachings. Awakening through unraveling, turning everyday experience into spiritual path or practices. Turning. This is the turning. I was thinking we can certainly say awakening through unraveling, which speaks to our time, and I've spoken a lot about this. But also you can turn it around. Unraveling as awakening. It's the unraveling which is the requisite. It's the path. It's what's required for awakening. What has to unravel to open us to a wise and compassionate view and engagement with life. And it requires an unraveling, even without great distress. What unravels is the self-centered dream, the things that hold us. And this is the wise and compassionate turn that's possible through practice, as practice, full of curiosity and welcome. And these are the things I'd like to speak about. I realized that in the last 2 days, our first 2 days, the times that I've spent with you I know has been very content rich. I've given you a lot, and it may seem a little overwhelming. It's part of why I gave you the notes, to maybe to help you reflect, and you can look at the recordings. But to have a shift in perspective about awakening and to open it up further and to understand unraveling not as simply a current difficulty and struggle, but as the nature of all reality, which shows up like this right now, is a way of turning. And now we turn to see how this offers us an opportunity. Similar to the phrase that I think I mentioned the first night, where Sojin Mel Weitzman, the abbot at Berkeley Zen Center, said one time, why would you turn a perfectly good practice opportunity into an ordinary event? And it's kind of a clever way of turning it around. Everything is a practice opportunity. And everything is an ordinary event. Which way do you want to see it? And our 4 practice principles are what gives us a guide for this turn. If you have your copy, I'm going to spotlight these in just a moment. I won't right now. The 4 practice principles, which we've spoken about each time, say caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, and holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher being just this moment, compassion's way. That third line, each moment, life as it is, that's the turn. This is turning everyday experience, realizing everyday experience, awakening to everyday experience as the path to awakening. It's available to us all the time. Every moment is a Dharma gate to step into, being more intimate with each moment, which is the way of compassion, that last line. Just as a tiny bit of review, the Buddha's core insights, which are sometimes called the 3 marks of existence, are impermanence, everything changes, dependent origination or interdependence, everything arrives only as a relationship in response to everything else, and dukkha, which is, I'm using the traditional word because it's hard to translate, which is the dissatisfactoriness based on our not understanding impermanence and dependent origination. That everything is a moving, flowing flux of live experience. But we don't particularly like that, or it's frightening, or it's inconceivable, and dukkha is the way we clamp down. One of the literal meanings of the word dukkha is the axle of a wheel that's stuck. Something right at the center of things that moves and is on which everything can move. And we talk about turning the wheel of the Dharma, things moving. But when it's stuck, caught in the self-centered dream, we're refusing to move with impermanence, refusing to understand we're connected to everything else, then we have suffering. So it's called the 3 marks of existence, because really what's a description of is the unraveling and the raveling, the ongoing creation and destruction of each moment and everything. This way in which the caughtness, there's a small practice which some of you have done, which I think is a nice bridge to some of the embodied practices. If you make a fist with your hand and make it quite tight, so it's a bit uncomfortable, and feel it, and it's how that sensation translates into your body, and look at it, see its grip, and just say to yourself quietly, this is suffering. This is suffering. And then very slowly begin to soften your grip, the tension, the tightness, the willful closure. And allow your hand in that funny way to begin to open. It may feel a little creaky or strange. And look at it, see it opening. Feel it. And then say to yourself, and this is the release of suffering. Then take that hand and bring it to your heart. Feel its arrival. And then say, and I am subject to this kind of suffering. And release. I'm subject to this suffering, and I have the possibility of its release. And then joining your other hand in opening, as you would with another person, with a community, and say, and others are subject to the same suffering and its release. And so just feeling the tension of grasping, the release of opening, the tenderness of arrival and caring for yourself and acknowledging what's possible for you and for all people. We can feel this flow. So the Buddha's core insights are impermanence, dependent origination, dukkha, anatta, and anicca. Anicca is impermanence. Anatta is no independent self. Dukkha. And the Buddha's core practice, we would say, is meditation, or in the Zen tradition, zazen. To deeply see into the nature of reality and to cultivate an awakened response to our lives. Just sitting. Just sitting. You know, it's the thing that I miss the most in these retreats. The timing is a little bit difficult for me to sit with you when you sit in the morning, but even so, we sit so little compared to what it's like in an ordinary residential retreat, where we might sit early in the morning before breakfast, then have breakfast, sit more in the morning, maybe have some teachings. And there's an awful lot of sitting, which can be quite a challenge. There are times when I can say it's not that I necessarily look forward to it, but it's the one thing in our practice path, in this tradition, if you follow it, which is non-negotiable. Because all of Zen practice rests on zazen. And all of Buddha's teaching is included in that practice of sitting. So there are the three principles, core insights of the Buddha, the essential practice, and then the essential fruit of practice, which is awakening through enlightenment and endarkenment, the illumination of the awesome and incomprehensible unfolding of reality in which we're living, right alongside plunging into the embodied immediacy of the moment, into the depths of fleshy human vulnerability. This is our way. So this is just a small amount of, like I said, a reminder and a review. I am going to share my screen for a second, and I'm going to share the practice chants that we use. Move them where you can see them easily. And I would like to, we've focused a bit on the four practice principles, but I want to take a look at the repentance and confession and also the refuges before we take another step further. Let's look at the repentance and confession. This is something that can be a little triggering for some people who have difficulty around old wounds from religion or church. And that's why I want to spend a little time on it, because it's the first thing that we chant actually in the morning liturgy, if you want to call it that. If you were in a temple and we were engaged in traditional practice, you would chant the verse of the robe when you were still in the zendo, but you go to the Buddha hall or when it's time for the liturgy, and we would chant the repentance. And just take a look at these words. All my ancient twisted or tangled karma, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. All our ancient tangled karma, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, we now fully avow. All the ancient twisted karma, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, all being now fully avows. So this is quite different than confessing sin or thinking there's something wrong with you or something for which you should and ought to feel ashamed. It's not that at all. These verses say, I've come into being through the lawful interaction, through impermanence and interdependence, of a tangle of karma, of causes and conditions. From beginningless time, I show up now, my life unfolds now, but it's from beginningless time. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. This is how we came into being. Human beings who are greedy. I sometimes, instead of saying greed, hate, and delusion, I'll say grasping and aversion and confusion. That we grasp at what we want and we push away what we don't, and we get confused or turn away. And that's the nature of organisms. That's not something wrong or some mistake. That's what living organisms do. Amoebas do that. Their little pseudopods go towards something that is food or good or nourishing, and they pull back from something that's dangerous or toxic. And there are certain pieces of information they don't respond to. From the single cell organism to the complexity of the human being, this is what it means to be alive, not what it means to be wrong. But we do carry this in our body, and it's expressed in our speech and mind. And so we have to come to terms with that reality. So that last line, I now fully avow, is saying I now stand up in the middle of my life and admit this is me. I'm one like that. I'm a living person. And all the things that I carry with me, all my gifts, all my difficulties, all my struggles, all my generosities, all the love I carry, all the hate that I carry, everything, I'm willing to look at it. I'm willing to acknowledge it. I'm willing to accept that this is me. And not start quickly sorting between good and bad and right and wrong. Instead, saying, everything that's come into making me this here, based on everything that it means to be alive, that I do carry with me, I'm going to make full confession of. And I'm going to say, yes, this is me. This is what I have to work with. This is my curriculum. These are the things I have. But because we understand dependent origination, that there's no independently existing self, we have to chant the second time. All our ancient tangled karma. We're in this together. We're all in the same boat. And we now fully avow. As a community, we begin to see each other and ourselves. When my teacher, Blanche Hartman, was first thinking about going to Tassajara, the monastery that I mentioned last night in that opening story, many people were going. They really wanted to go. Like I said, it was the first Zen monastery in the Western world, and it's kind of a big deal at the time, but it was also small and rugged, and So she was asking some of her friends, like, what's it like? What do you do? And they said, well, we live together and work together and cook and clean up. We practice together in the Zendo. We train together. And pretty soon, everybody can see who you are. You might as well. Our practice reveals us. It doesn't hide us. It doesn't purify us. It doesn't make us holy. It reveals us. And this is what we acknowledge right up front. All of my karma, all of ours. And then finally, all we realize it's not personal. Remember, don't think things personally. We're in this flow for a very small time, for a few years, with a few people. And we play a significant role, even though in some ways we're not that important. But we understand the totality, the fullness, the remarkable nature of who we are. So I wanted to take some time for you to understand this is where we begin. This is the beginning of the turn, to be willing to come home to ourselves, to see ourselves clearly and fully, and let others do the same, and to realize the whole world is this. And with that turn, and understanding the 4 practice principles, this releasing, we begin to realize, oh, I have placed my faith in things that are not worthy of my faith. I've bet my life on my thoughts and beliefs and feelings and habit patterns. We don't think about it that way. But if you think about it this way, if somebody were to say, what are you willing to die for? Because that's what you're doing right now. We know the inevitability, and this is the way we're playing it out. So if we don't take as central, as something worth betting our lives on, which is our habit patterns, our conditioning, our sort of neurotic things, internally and in relationship, what if we were to take refuge? And the root of the word refuge means to fly home, to come back to something true, and to be sheltered in coming home. And in Buddhism, the 3 treasures in which we take refuge are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. You see there, I take refuge in Buddha, I take refuge in Dharma, I take refuge in Sangha. I take refuge in the teacher, the Buddha, I take refuge in the teachings, the Dharma, and I take refuge in my fellow members along the way. But there's a deeper way to think about it. That's the first pass. I come home to the Buddha of my own true nature. I fly home to what's most true here, not to some old guy in India, not to some teacher in some monastery, not to this person in Hawaii standing in. I come home to my own true nature. And I do that by, secondly, I take refuge in Dharma. I come home to the way things actually are, the deep reality of the way life truly moves. And this is what we've been talking about for 2 days. This is what we practice. That's why we stop moving and sit, to realize all of what's moving in us and through us, all the ways we're attempting to move away from it or go to sleep or to push against, to find what's true. The Dharma is the truth of the way thing, the lawful nature of the universe. I come home to my own true nature. I come home to the lawful nature of the universe. And I come home to the deep reality that there's nothing but relationship, Sangha. Not just with people. There's nothing but. Everything you see, you think are discrete things, but they're actually relationships. And that begins to change our perspective, which is what awakening is about. If we are willing to look deeply, confession and repentance, shift our perspective, and commit ourselves to coming home and realizing ourselves as Buddha, realizing the truth of the matter, how things actually move, and to realize our profound interconnection with everyone and everything. Then together, in that second recitation, it says, we take refuge in Buddha, immersing body and mind deeply in the way, awakening true mind. There's a line that is not in this form, which we actually use, where it says, we take refuge in Buddha before all being, immersing body and mind deeply in the way, awakening true mind. I think you don't have to concern yourself with this so much at the moment. It doesn't say before all beings, it doesn't say in front of everyone. Before we create an individually existing self, we drop into the awakened way. But let's just look at what we have here. We take refuge. Together, we come back, immersing ourselves, our body and mind, deeply in the way, awakening true mind. We engage in these practices together. The sitting, the relational, the teachings, the ways that we come together. We take refuge in Dharma, entering deeply the merciful ocean of Buddha's way. The Dharma is the Buddha's way, and it's a merciful ocean. We immerse ourselves deeply in those teachings, in that way of living, in that life. And last, we take refuge in Sangha, bringing harmony to everyone, free from hindrance. That's our hope. We bring our whole self with the aspiration not to harmonize other people, but to bring harmony, free from the hindrances that obstruct the natural harmony of our true nature as Buddha and the way things operate, which is the Dharma. So together we take refuge in these ways. And then the universal, the third, just like in the repentance, now all being has completely taken refuge in Buddha. Now all being has completely taken refuge in Dharma. Now all being has completely taken refuge in Sangha. I would say it like this. Having made that personal turn, having realized we only turn together, we realize that there is nothing but Buddha nature, which all being is manifesting. There's nothing but the Dharma, the lawful nature of the universe, which all being is now manifesting. There's nothing but the relational interdependence of all beings, which is what we're immersed in, what's being manifest. So I take some time with these because you can see how potent they are and how important they are. And I hope that you'll keep this and return to it as we move through these teachings over time. When I was thinking about refuge, because it's so essential, I was also thinking about how it knits together with those teachings that we spoke about awakening, where we start, awakening through unraveling. And I was making some notes and writing some things, and I came upon a quotation from Joan Sutherland, who I think I'd mentioned before, a Zen teacher, and her commentaries on a sutra called the Sutra that Vimalakirti speaks. And listen to the elegance and beauty of her words here, and how it relates to the refuges, and how it relates to awakening. She said, if we don't dive into the vast ocean of existence, if you don't dive into the vast ocean of existence, you'll never find the precious jewel of awakening. In the heavenly realms, in other words, trying to use meditation to ascend to some elevated state of consciousness. In the heavenly realms, everything is perfect, and awakening isn't possible because nothing ever changes. It's in this world where our ankles go out from under us, our hearts get broken, we weep tears that are the solvent for whatever is stuck within us. It's here that awakening can happen. Something can happen in the dark that can't happen in the brilliant light of the heavenly realms. Something about simplicity. and stillness, vastness and depth, grounded in a world house, our world home, full of lamps and oil and all the rest. In the velvet dark, there's so much less we're compelled to know and to do. And so much more space for listening. We bless the marvelous poverty of human life by doing what we can only do here, feeling our way along the walls that give texture and shape to the deep nights of our life. This is what undarkenment means. This is the door to awakening. It's such a beautiful image. I heard an analogy once, an image of this process being like you're offered a door that you decide to step into. The door, Dharma gate opens, you step into it, the door closes, and you're in absolute and complete darkness. You don't know what the landscape is like, what the textures are like. But if in the darkness you begin feeling along the walls, maybe you feel for a while and you feel a corner and you turn, and you explore gently in the darkness this way, you begin to feel the contours of the space, simply, quietly. And for some of you, even the imagery as I say it may bring some anxiety about doing this in the dark. And if you go around the room into which you've been ushered in the dark and have felt the contours of the walls, you begin to get a sense of the space, how big it is, how long the walls are, the shape. And if you're able and willing, if you have the courage, you can step away and maybe move across the room and find the other wall that you had touched and begin to crisscross a little to find where is the center, what's here. And in the image that I heard, it was supposed that as you find the center, you begin to reach and you feel something. You feel a cord that you pull and the light comes on. That you've discovered through your commitment to practice in the velvety darkness, as she says, in the simplicity and stillness and the vastness and the depth and the poverty of what we normally use to manifest and make it in the world isn't there. And so we trust a simple practice that's both contained but also embodied. You know, this is why all of you have, most of you anyway, who've studied with me before, know that I shape all of my teachings really around what I call the double helix of growing up and waking up, the double helix of maturity. That one can, and I've spent the last 45 years as a therapist watching people do amazing work in therapy. It's been one of my deepest callings in my life. And my own experience as a client, changing my life because of it. And I've also seen how both in myself and others, once the beauty and power and the depth begins to be revealed, you can use that as a practice in which the self-improvement project suddenly becomes reality, and you continue to look for and push for the next thing to work with. And there's a way in which self-identification and self-identity and working on problems becomes the whole perspective. And it's so focused on self. And without a non-dual practice, you're still trapped in that self. But having spent the last 25 or 30 years in monasteries and temples training in Buddhism, and as a Zen practitioner in particular, and then teaching, I've seen people also who've opened to the Dharma, found its beauty, realized the profound capacity for transformation, learned about the Dharma, even teaches it. And when you sit and all of these embodied things arise, you're conditioning. I see so many of these people have no earthly idea what to do with it. And the admonition to just sit more is not enough. Those of you with trauma training know, and I'm going to make it too simple here, but you know that two of the criterion for making terrible experiences into trauma is the inability to move or do anything or speak. And what do we ask you to do in a meditation retreat? Sit still and be silent. So if you're carrying trauma, it doesn't necessarily mean it will be re-triggered, but if trauma is triggered, it can be an unpleasant setting. But if you put these two things together, you put the skill of psychotherapy and the profoundly transformational capacities of Buddhist practice together, you get the double helix of growing up and waking up, where one can mature oneself as a living human mammal who needs attachment and others. And you can open to the vast, awesome, inconceivable, but embodied reality of what it means to be a human in this lifetime. And that is more of a full practice. That's endarkenment and enlightenment. The fruit of that practice, the way I describe it now, I told you what the Buddha's core teachings were. I describe it as softening barriers to love. Because if I think as a psychologist and also a Zen teacher, if secure attachment is the single most robust predictor of well-being in adulthood in humans, and as I've worked so many years with people who are dying, if the final messages are consistently, have I loved well? Did I love? If the quality of love is the most important thing in the beginning and most important thing at the end, it's also the most important thing throughout one's life. And so softening the barriers to love is the fruit of this practice of growing up and waking up. These are the things that you were writing to me in your emails. These are the ways in which practice comes to life. A couple of years ago, Ryan wrote a poem that came out of an experience in one of our retreats in Minneapolis. As I read it, I wondered if it was a reflection on one of his inquiry times in Madison, which was quite potent, but I think it was from Minneapolis. And as I often do, I really love sharing the students' voices because this is the way we understand the way that we're knitted together so deeply. So I'll be reading Ryan's poem back to him. If you want him to read it to you, maybe he'll do so later. So the I, and this is written in first person, will be Ryan, actually. And notice how all the teachings thus far now come together. The title that he gave to the poem is When Life Happens. When life happens. Dukkha. Awakening through unraveling. Turning each moment when life happens into a practice path. When life happens. Wham. Caught off guard. I stagger back from the blow of this sudden disruption to life as I know it. I stagger back from the blow of this sudden disruption to life as I know it. The echo of my beating heart pounds in my ear, acoustic vibrations, evidence that I'm still alive. Each beat, a life-giving flow of blood to my extremities, animating the body, which I fear is no longer mine. My body joins the chorus, shaking and trembling, pulling into nervous alertness. The sudden surge of energy causes me to look around, fearful of the gaze of others, terror at what they might say, what they might think. My posture drops, my shoulders collapse, and effort to hide in plain sight Shame settles upon me like a cloak, too heavy to bear. Its weight is familiar, comfortably uncomfortable. Thoughts race around in my head like an emotional vertigo, swirling, disorienting, and dizzy. I grasp for something familiar to stop my spinning, to bring my equilibrium again, but my hands find nothing. I pause. The world spins on, unabated by my effort at stillness. Tears begin the slow descent from my eyes, covering the expanse of my cheek, forming tributaries down my face. Their flow carrying with them remnants of the pain inside. They pool at my chin before, drop by drop, they break free and free fall, some catching on my chest, others falling into the absorbing ground beneath me. Each tear's impact helps me feel less alone. Each tear's impact helps me feel less alone. My pain and sadness caught and shared. My heart is laid open like a safe whose door has been blown off. And yet this openness not only allows my internal world to come spilling out, but also allows love's entry. I could die from this exposure, this vulnerability, and yet, here is where I must live life, giving and receiving with a heart wide open. Giving and receiving with a heart wide open. Each moment, life as it is. When life happens, and then Ryan's beautiful and intimate description, I would imagine that there are a number of you there with your own tears, just listening. I hope I've certainly done it justice in offering it. Because this is the entry point, not just sadness and tears, but as Ryan says in his poem, caught off guard, I stagger back from the blow of sudden disruption of life as it is. That could be in an intimate relationship. Many of you wrote to me about that. It could be sitting quietly in meditation and suddenly something bubbles up that disturbs you. It could be watching television, the news, hearing the next update from the New York Times, the next bit of bad news or shocking turn. And then the embodied reality that things begin to move. And the shame at the movement. And then the manager's trying to take care of it all. But as things turn, as things break free, carrying the remnants of whatever pain is inside, and sometimes it's the pain outside that has struck us, that's pierced us, that's overwhelmed us. These can actually be absorbed in the ground beneath us, which includes our friends, includes our Sangha and our community, because they're shared. He says, caught and shared. You want to be caught as you fall, and whatever you're experiencing shared. Not just pain, joy, love, terror, rage, everything. As one's heart is laid open, internal world spilling out allows love's entry. As many of you have heard me say, the opening through which the love goes in is the same opening through which the pain comes out. We find ourselves released into joy, also full of tears. We wonder, am I sad? Am I happy? I could die from this exposure, this vulnerability. I could. There's a line in a beautiful poem which says, I could die from having been loved like that. And yet this is the place we live. We're always in relationship. There's nothing but relationship. We're always vulnerable. There is no absolute safety. There's relative safety, of course. There are times when you're more safe than others, but absolutely everything changes. Everything is being born and dying. And giving and receiving with a heart wide open. Each moment, life as it is. And our desire to find a way. A student was telling me about an incident where her brother had actually had one practice discussion with Suzuki Roshi decades ago when he was still alive. Suzuki Roshi died in 1971. And so this had to have been earlier than that, 50 years ago. And he went in to see the teacher and said, if I meditate and practice, will I be less sad? And Suzuki Roshi said, what's wrong with sad? And then rang the bell to send him out. It wasn't a harsh ejection. It was a profound opening. What's wrong with being alive? What's wrong with feeling life fully? If you practice, if I meditate, will I be less human? Will I not have bad things happen? Will I not have reactions? No. Will I become a larger container for life? Asking Joko back once, how do you know if you're doing the right practice? She said, are you becoming a larger container? More open to life. Now this doesn't suggest that we don't have preferences. I think I mentioned this a day or two ago. No feelings, no thoughts, no embodied reactions. Of course we do. It suggests that through practice, we have a greater capacity to welcome and meet all of our preferences, all of our feelings, thoughts, and embodied reactions. We sit in Zazen to receive, even welcome everything, pushing away nothing, including the intense desire to push things away. Everything's included. This isn't a process of refinement or purification. It's a process of radical inclusion and opening. There was another story, a Suzuki Roshi story, which I seem to collect, of a man who had gone to a sesshin, which is the name for a long, usually a week-long intensive Zen formal retreat. And any of you who have been on long retreats, you know, after 3 or 4 days, it's tough. There's a predictable kind of wall there. And at this point, this very successful and accomplished adult man came to Suzuki Roshi and said, I can't do this. I can't. I have to leave. And Suzuki didn't try to persuade him either way. He said, yeah, we try and we try and we fail. And then we go deeper. And this is how it feels with life. You know, we try and we fail. And some days we succeed, and some days it's joyful, and some days it's not. But we don't go deeper in life. We don't mature in this double helix of maturity, unless really in some ways we're brought to our knees, as we are these days, through the unraveling. We try and we try and we fail, and then we go deeper. A student once asked a teacher, when times of great difficulty visit us, how should we meet them? And the teacher said, welcome. Welcome what comes. Each moment, life as it is, it's an invitation to not divide reality into this and that. There's only the Dharma unfolding, the lawful nature of the universe, the way things actually are, the Dharma. That's what you're seeing unfolding. On that line from Catherine's poem, Donald Trump is teaching the Dharma. Can you see it? Can you hear it? There's only reality unfolding. You may like it or dislike it, but can you meet it with a big mind and a big heart so that you can respond appropriately? Well, how does this play out in the practicalities of our life? First of all, let's talk about this retreat, because this retreat is where we are right now. I'm deeply appreciative of the beautiful ways you've all come forward thus far, both before the retreat and during the retreat, offering your vulnerability, your curiosity, your mature reflections, your creative viewpoints. And I haven't even heard them all because I haven't been part of the discussions, but I've heard about them. And you come to me in inquiry and I hear about them. This creates the sustained connections of the three treasures. And there may be moments where you feel a good bit of dysregulation or difficulty, but hopefully you can also experience the holding and that kind of relative safety offered within the group as a container for meeting each moment with care. There's a phrase that Zen Master Dogen would often use. He said, ordinary people are pulled by karma. Bodhisattvas are led by vow. In a more ordinary way, ordinary people are pulled around by their conditioning. They're the puppets, they're not in charge. Bodhisattvas, people who have made a vow to live and be lived for the benefit of all beings in this practice, are led by a vow. They have something that leads them. They're not jerked around. They're even led when they're jerked around because they have a vow which leads them. And I know that there's inevitable tension, this pull between some of you will be more pulled towards formal practices and some less formal relational interactive experiences. That's natural. These are the two sides, remember? This is the strength of our model of growing up and waking up. We all come with our preferences for the forms and containment on the one hand, and relational embodied immediacy and connection on the other. The secret is to realize them as the same thing, just two perspectives. Neither is right or wrong, neither is more important than the other. Whether we're going to be practicing with the traditional Zen forms, like in a Zendo, or engaged in open-hearted relationality, both are essential expressions of spiritual practice, waking up and growing up. And this is the reason we've come together in this community in this way. This is what called you. There's the formation of the container, which are our forms, and the content which we bring. There's the spaciousness of primary awareness, and then the content of our awareness. If we rely just on the spaciousness, we kind of lose our intimacy with each other. If we get caught up just in the contents of our awareness, we think we are what we think and feel. And that's not the whole truth. Growing up and waking up. And so I really honor the way that this kind of organic and trusting path, both starting with the organizing group and all of you as participants, how we've approached the cultivation of these different elements of the retreat, putting it together. And people have stepped forward within the community to steward these different elements of the retreat. And, you know, I've offered only limited guidance for the structure and only limited input in the offerings, and then released you, the Sangha, to facilitate in a wholehearted and authentic manner. I've also very intentionally not participated in the evening discussions because I've wanted you to step forward and hold each other as the beautiful container that you've created, including the difficulties that arise. And the tapestry that you're weaving is gorgeous and rich and full of beauty, full of flaws, full of everything. So just a little warning label note. The function of deep transformational practice is not consolation, but in some ways disruption. Now, I do not mean violence or harshness, but hopefully our practice, as wise and compassionate as it can be, nudges us to wake up to our habit patterns, to examine how we actually live our lives, and to learn to choose more consciously our responsiveness to life. Our automatic reactions, as they arise in response to our practice requests, to timing, forms, rituals, exercises, whatever, are a wonderful opportunity for self-study, to see what we gravitate toward, to see what we pull away from, how we might feel aversion or judgment. But remember, strictly speaking, practices are not to be judged in terms of like and dislike. Likes and dislike are for like a movie or a meal or entertainment or something. We think, oh, I like that, I don't like that. That actually doesn't make any sense in terms of practice. A practice calls up like and dislike, but that's just data. That's what you're looking for. That's what the practices are designed for, to see the way that you grasp or push away or become confused or turn away. That's their function. So if you only do things you like, you will make sure that you stay asleep. If you push yourself towards things that you dislike, because there's some sort of, almost like masochistic, you want to be a tough guy, that doesn't help either. There will be offerings in every retreat, which might seem more or less skillful, but this is just another opportunity to learn and to grow, not to judge and to rank. Bottom line, when in doubt, turn to curiosity. This is the turn. Awakening through unraveling, turning everyday experience into spiritual practice. Everyday experience is nothing but a practice if you see it that way, if you open with curiosity. There's an evening gata we sometimes do at Appamada, which I'll repeat and I can give you in your notes. It says, let us be respectfully reminded. Life and death are of supreme importance. Time swiftly passes by, and with it our only chance. Each of us must strive to awaken. Be aware, don't squander your life. Don't squander our life. It's a reminder that this is it. Time moves very quickly. So each of us is invited to practice. We don't have to, but if you want to awaken, that's a useful thing to do. And it will offer you beautiful glimpses of ultimate reality. It will plunge you into the depths about which we often want to turn away from. And in that alchemy, you'll be free. And that's what this practice offers us together. So, let's meet. Hopefully, some of what I've said has called you forward to really the essence of our practicing together here. Please raise your hand. Please come visit. I'm quite alone here in this little room, and I'd love to have you join me. And as we wait, we sit. Each moment, a moment of zazen, until Nancy shows up. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Flint.
It's so good to see these familiar faces.
It's really nice to see you. Thank you so much. As I sit with you, I make this very strong, intentional vow that I'm going to keep just showing up every day, and I'm going to participate and keep learning and growing. And then it all falls apart.
Sure.
But I liked what you said, that a good bodhisattva, just continuing to show up is what it's all about. And so I thought I'd share with you what's happened in the last 2 nights. So Thursday night we sat together, and I had all this great intention, and I walked out of my little room here and into life and got really flustered and started my ritual of la la la, and then I laughed and I said, what just happened? I just got done doing all of this beautiful reflection, and I just walked into life, and it just washed over me, and I lost it.
That's like in Ryan's poem, it starts, whim.
Yeah, it's like, whoa. But last night I left my little room and became equally as flustered about life, just so overwhelming. And I started and I stopped and I just sat down on the floor because I remembered your words, everything changes. And I just sat and I cried and I waited, and it changed, and I got up and went on, and it was beautiful. It was so helpful. I mean, it was beautiful. So
wonderful. You're using the teaching in its most simplistic and clear way. There's an old phrase in Zen, when we fall down, we use the ground to get up.
Yeah.
Ground on which we fall is the very thing that uses us to get up, and there you were.
I just stopped. I said, I just got to stop, and I just sat down.
Yeah,
and I just waited.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And some days we do, and some days we don't. But we remember we try and we fail, and then we go deeper.
I know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
coming forward and sharing what your practice and how it relates so perfectly to what we're doing. And in doing so, hopefully this encouraged you to continue too.
Well, I thought if you could just do this every night, then I could do that every night.
I'll just show up every night. But the only way to do that actually right now is to, there's so many things online, that recordings, I can show up every night if you want. It just won't be alive.
I know. So it's on me to keep going. I will.
I know you're sort of joking, but sort of not. Too.
I know.
I know. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Flint.
These are the moments I get to sit with you. Hi, Bonnie.
Hello. I wasn't expecting to get on so quickly.
Oh, suddenly life is in your face here.
It is. I so appreciated you talking about we can all be part of this and come as we are, and what we take from it and what we know, because when the pandemic hit and everything fell apart, I pushed this way as well.
Yeah.
The being introspective was not. I'm a very extroverted, physical person, and it shut my world down. I'm also retiring after 35 years and don't get to say goodbye to everyone and don't know what I'm heading into, which is a wonderful opportunity, but it's also losing. We talk about losing identity. I'm And I'm an engineer, so now what am I going to be? I'm
Yeah.
not going to do that. Anyhow, so thank you for the reminder. This is not an area that's easy for me to sit.
Sure.
all.
And one of the things that's important is the Buddha said that there are 4 noble postures for meditation: standing, walking, sitting, and lying down. So we say sitting because that's the most classic yogic way of being stable and silent and still. But for some people who have injuries or can't, they lie down. If they don't go to sleep, it's a good way. You can simply find a beautiful place in your garden to stand and look around. You can take walks. If their intention is not just hanging out, standing, it's actually with intention, or walking mindfully. If your body needs to move, because that's what's essential. And then, just like Nancy said, there are moments where you want to sit down because it'll come naturally, be called to. Follow that because you're trying to find your way.
I keep coming back, and the invitation even said, don't push it away. I'm like, fine. And the words were in there. It's like, how would you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I also, another little helpful household hint, watch what you call yourself. When we use like, I'm an engineer. Well, that's definitely not what you are. It's what you did.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the way we all do this, that you begin to form an identity around the doing. But if you appreciate, I'll give you an example of what I mean. When I was about to let go of my license as a psychologist,
Yes.
I was very, I spent all those years getting all those degrees and doing all those things and getting a license and maintaining it, doing all the stuff you did as an engineer. And I did no longer really need it. In fact, I was more free to be a Zen teacher if I let go of it because of certain things. And so I was talking to Aaron, my husband, about it, who's been with me this whole time. And I was this and that and worrying about identity, and he listened. And then he said, will it make any difference? I said, well, not really. I mean, practically, he's very practical. And he said, it's been really good to you. And that was all. Why don't you just appreciate how good it was to you? And take
Or
that,
not.
or not, but it supported you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, there are times when it was difficult. I mean, being a psychotherapist is a strange calling if you do it day to day. You're basically in lockup all day long with people, and with people that aren't feeling the best. And there
Yes.
are times that are difficult, and yet I wouldn't trade it. And being a professional, I was able to have a good life. So it was good to me, and I was going to say goodbye to it. And then I had to deal with what it meant to not use that as the way I identified myself. So I had to come closer.
Yes.
Yeah. And so keep attending to this and talk to other people about it and get some support because you're not alone. I'm right with you on that. And so I'm so glad that you came forward today so we could talk about it a bit. And let yourself be very flexible at the practices you do. Just keep doing them.
Yes.
Take care. And thanks for the courage to step forward. Hola, Gabby from Mexico.
Am I frozen? Can you hear me? Yeah.
No, there you are.
Hello.
It's so good to see you.
Yeah.
A
Been a while.
a little freezing now and then, but oh, it's been too long, Gabby.
Yeah. But now I'm just so grateful for being so close now. Yeah,
No. So you've been here each day?
we get a chance.
Good.
Well, Friday I had another meeting, but yeah, I've been.
Yeah, I can see the recordings if you want.
Yeah,
Are you in
um,
Mexico City?
yeah,
Yeah.
Mexico City.
Mhm.
Hmm.
What's on your heart today?
Yeah, I was just so touched by your sharing today. Um, I've been touching these very vulnerable places in relationships.
Yeah, you wrote to me very tenderly, I know.
Yeah. After I wrote you, I felt ashamed. It was just like, oops,
I
because
was,
things are.
I was just holding you.
Thank you, thank you.
Te quedé, oh, pobrecita.
Pobrecito de mí. Yeah, I mean, I just trust everything is fine. Yeah, just breaking.
Yeah, but I also have a lot of confidence in you because I know.
Yeah. And what I find very tough is that through the years I realized that I have quite a nice grade of trauma
Mhm.
that
I'm not wanting to make a joke, but freezes you. Looks like your trauma. You, we've lost you a little bit for a moment, which is what trauma does to us sometimes.
can
So
you,
I lost
yeah,
you there for a minute, but you're back now.
okay, talking
You,
about
you,
trauma
realize,
and freezing.
you realize some trauma.
Yeah, so I have these places where I'm chaotic and messy and
Mhm.
difficulty to sometimes respond for commitments and things that I know hurt people. Yeah. So I'm working with others and it's so I just feel like, oh my God. So I touch these places where I feel like not worthy of being loved, like really, really, oh my God, very vulnerable places. And
It's like in that poem I was reading, the shame that comes with feeling this vulnerability.
yeah, exactly.
But you're engaging in the most, in the deepest antidote to shame right now. Because if you allow yourself to come on the screen with all these people looking at you, and you look at me, and you say these things about the shame that you feel, we can't take it away. But this is what begins to make it turn. When you don't hide, you say it and come forward, because in it we can feel your desire to be wholehearted. Just pausing and waiting. Yeah. If you can hear me, I would make a suggestion, and that you simply
Because
just
I understand that people, yes.
because you're freezing, I have a question. Suggestion. Just for one moment, stay with us, but turn off your camera. You still hear us?
Yeah.
And we can still hear you, but now we're not as much bandwidth. And just notice what it feels like now that we can't see you. And we can't see you. No one's looking at you. You can't see us. What's happening now?
But right now I feel safe. I mean, I feel safe with you, even if it's all
Sure.
these people there, because I'm used to psychotherapy. So
Yeah.
I'm used to showing my issues there.
Good. I
So
just wanted to make sure it was okay, because I think if we leave the camera off, you won't freeze for a minute. And
yeah, it's good.
I just wanted to make sure that we had a chance to complete with this brief connection of care and love coming your way,
Yeah.
when it's so difficult, when you see, like in the confession chant, this is what I actually see that I do that's not so great. This is what I see that I do that is useful. And relationships are sometimes a very strong curriculum for learning, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So allow your camera to come back now so we can see each other to say goodbye. Ah, beautiful. I hope to see you in person again before some,
Yeah. Hopefully.
hopefully.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I remember flying into the huge and chaotic airport in Mexico City. Some of you have done that. So concerned because I didn't know what would happen. And thank God Gabby was there to get me and to guide me and to lead me out of the city and into the mountains. And I put myself in her hands and felt safe. It's lovely to hold her for a bit. And please step forward, whoever else has, if you just want to connect, doesn't have to be a question. Eileen.
Flint, hello.
Hello, hello.
Um, I was reflecting upon Suzanne's comment and Bonnie's comment just earlier about um, giving up, and yourself as well, giving up what you'd strongly identified with in a career, and then trying to find the openness and the vulnerability to meet. And for me, what struck me is that I never really got to have a career that I identified with strongly, that I had to give up. So when I walked away from it, it was easily let go of and forgotten.
Mm.
And what I find interesting is that now that I am stepping into a role in life that I do identify with now,
Mm-hmm.
that I have a similar kind of difficulty opening to that, the vulnerability of letting it in,
Mm-hmm.
opposed to relinquishing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered if you could say any, if you might speak to that in any way,
Well, every Dharma gate has two sides, doesn't it?
at least.
You can be on one side or the other side, but it's the same Dharma gate. That's right. And now you have just the one that is appropriate for you, the one taking you to the edge that you need to step toward, which is the one about receiving. You're a very functional person. You've done great in jobs. You know, you're really good at it. But you didn't have one that took your heart, you know. But now you're led by your heart and your vow, and there's something you really love to do.
It just interests me that I have resistance with this and apprehension and doubt.
That's right. And so
But
you realize, oh, I have apprehension and resistance and doubt even with this. So it doesn't have to do with the job,
no,
but it's a light shining on the places where I could be more free. Oh, okay. Then it's just data. It's not a brokenness or a problem. It's like, oh, thank goodness. I'm being pointed to exactly the trailhead, so I know how to follow that trail.
well, I just wanted to share this for those that may not have had, well, that may have had the same experience that I had.
Yeah. And I think you know that as we go along, as my student, we'll stay with this. And I appreciate the way you are coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Flint.
I can, now that she's not online, I can say how, or in front of us here, I'll say how much I appreciate the beauty that she's brought forward to the Madison Sangha and all Sanghas, because she helps out so much with technology and other things. She's really generous. Eileen's been quite a help. May see Margie coming through the door again. There she is.
Hello, Flint.
Hey.
I just have to tell you how gratifying this has been for me. These
Yeah.
wonderful people.
Aren't they amazing?
Oh, I cry. It's so sweet.
I get to be with these people all the time. I feel so fortunate.
You're very fortunate. Yes.
Very fortunate. I go to various parts of the beautiful world and meet people like this.
Yeah, yeah. Not much other than I was with friends today and said what I was doing, and many of them knew you. And so that was a joy also.
I'm always surprised that people know me.
Oh my goodness, you left a trail in Austin. And I had a couple of insights that have been already gratifying to me too. I realize it's mind for me that unravels, and mind that also stitches back up, picks up the thread. And I love the softening the barriers to love.
Yeah.
That is a joyful thought, really.
You'd appreciate this. I think other people have heard me say it. That phrase came to me because someone challenged me a couple of years ago. They said, "You've been a therapist for 40 years, and now you're a Zen teacher and doing all this stuff. What do you really do?"
Yeah.
And what I heard myself say, you know how this is, that I think my function is to help remove barriers to love.
Well, I think you do it, and that's what
whether I do or not. I think that's the function. That's my vow.
Yeah, I got it.
And I think you understand that because
I
with
do.
your own work. You know?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You mentioned to me when you wrote to me that you wanted to reclaim your name, Marjorie.
Yes, I explained in one of the small groups. My mother, when the doctor Haney of home birth back in 1929, the year the Great Depression started, I thought I caused it. She said, the doctor said, "What are you going to name her?" And she said, "Margie Ruth." And he said, "Well, let's just make that Marjorie."
Oh, I see.
And so it's sort of my way of honoring my mother.
Okay, I didn't know what
She always called me Margie, and I feel very loved when people call me Margie.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So we'll call you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's like, you know, in this tradition, often people will receive Dharma names from their teacher, a name that really expresses their true essence. So now we know yours is Margie.
Thank you. Well, thank you again. And
yes. And
it's a joy to be back in your presence.
It's wonderful to be back with you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Monica. There she is. You had your hand up the first night, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then we didn't get to you.
Yeah.
Here you
nice
are.
to meet you, Flint.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
I'm from Hong Kong.
Yes. Good.
Yeah. And
are you with Brendan?
Yeah. Brendan is my Haikomi buddy.
Ah, great. You happen to have the same name?
Oh yeah. That surname is very common for Chinese.
Yeah. My one of my dissertation advisors was from Hong Kong, named Wong.
Ah, yeah.
What brings you forward today?
Well, the first thing is just to want to say hi to you.
Yes.
It's nice to meet you. we were supposed to meet in Hawaii in June, but then canceled. And but I really find that the COVID-19 just opened so many chances for us to meet. Well, wow.
Yes.
Although that is not good, but then it creates a lot of opportunities.
It's always mixed, like everything.
Yeah. And you know, these 2 days or 3 days, your teaching is so rich. Yesterday, I'm so tired, the body. I didn't do much, but I'm curious that tiredness, what's bring the tiredness?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why the first day I raised my hand is because at almost the last, I don't remember it's the last or almost the last slide that I saw, I got a very weird feeling.
Mm.
There's the fear come out. And I study it. The fears look like I have to, well, that slide is the back of the two person facing is the light or the moon. I don't exactly remember. It's like you are moving towards some kind of freedoms or whatever things through the practice. But then I have a weird feeling of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And then I study that. It looked like I have to let go all the things that I have, including my family, to go towards this. You know, if myself practice and then left them behind, then I have to leave all the things behind.
Mm.
And then I'm curious on that. I didn't push myself to take away the fear, because that is the fear that I have.
Right. I think what you might take with you is the idea, will I have to let go of my family? Or will I have to let go of the ideas and beliefs and messages from my family?
I don't have, you know, when you're saying that, I have a kind of emotions coming out, feeling some kind of watering in my eye. I can't figure out what this is, but it's not sadness. Yeah.
Sometimes it may simply be the energy of being heard or met, touched.
Right. That is it. Yeah.
Just the loving presence, just the intimacy.
Yeah. It's being realized. Yeah.
Yes.
And understand. Yeah. It's like containing this emotion. Yeah. Yeah. And then these 2 days with your teaching is so rich. And yesterday, oh my God, that can be breaking into so many topics.
Oh yes, it was a lot. It was many things all at once, but we have limited time, so I don't want to miss out.
Yeah, but this morning at the end, you talk about the oceans. And then I suddenly feel that the fears is reducing. And then I appreciate these oceans.
Yeah, the
and
merciful.
wanting to go into these oceans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I must say that I'm so grateful with the practice of Haikomi. It's really leading to this, like you mentioned about not knowing, bearing witness, non-violence. All this is like, wow, it's just going into that spiritual path.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but when Ron Kurtz first developed the Hakomi method in its original form, he was teaching part of the time with some people at Boulder at Naropa University. It's a Buddhist university. And he showed them what he was doing. And they said, oh, this is applied Buddhism.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I know the time is short. Thank
Yeah,
you so
we should
much.
stop now. Thank you so much. I'm glad you got to connect today.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know that there are. Yes. What?
Hope to see you in future.
Oh yes, I hope so too. Absolutely. I noticed that there are a couple of people with their hands up, so maybe we'll get to see them tomorrow. I hope so. And Ryan, I think you probably want to come back on. There he is.
All right,
Thank you
you can
so much for that beautiful poem, by the way.
Well, it was an interesting experience having it read to me instead of
I
reading
wondered
it
about
to
that.
myself.
Uh,
Yeah, thank you for offering that opportunity.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Flint, for your time. I think I see you're muting, so I'm imagining you're stepping away.
Oh, I'm just going to hang out. I just didn't want to make any
Okay.
unusual.
Okay.
I'll be right here with you.
Great. All right. So we are going to transition to our evening discussion time. As you'll see, Bill just posted in the chat the link to be able to make that transition, hopefully as easy as possible. If you will recall from yesterday, there are 3 steps that you will take. It'll ask you if you want to open Zoom meetings. You'll click yes, open Zoom meetings. It'll ask you if you want to leave and join a new meeting. Click leave and join. And then you will wait a moment while Bill is making the transition over. So as people feel ready, you can begin to make that small click of a journey now, and then we will see you in the other meeting in just a moment. And if you get lost along the way, the email that I sent earlier has the meeting Zoom invite. So you can simply click that Zoom invite. Again, if our Zoom link, if you get lost along the way, and we'll hopefully you'll make your way to the meeting. And we'll see you shortly. Thank you, Flint.
I think he signed off before you did. Just
Okay.
like 2 seconds. And we're down to 14 people signing off yet.
Oh, great. Well, I will transition and I'll see you over there, Bill.
Plus, just keep in mind, the meeting can start, well, as soon as I close this, you can start the other meeting. It'll all populate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as long as there's not 2 going on.
Great.
Okay, we'll see you in a
second.
while. We got 5, 4, 3. Can we see 3? Diana, Chris, and Monica, sign off. And I'm going to end the meeting. See you shortly in the other program if you'll just sign off.